Hi there. Most likely this year, you'll have spoken to family, friends, and colleagues remotely via the internet. That is how we've been able to make this podcast. Therefore, it's very likely that you've experienced those amazing audio special effects like compression, lag, and my personal favourite, sounding like a robot. So don't you worry, we've worked very hard and managed to achieve those exact same special effects on this podcast at times, so that we remain on brand with most people's 2020. I hope you enjoy the show.
This is the Lockdown Hotline Sessions with your host, Danielle Lonnon.
Would somebody please answer that?
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lockdown Hotline Sessions with me, your host, Danielle Lonnon. This is the podcast where we put identical questions to all of our guests, but they mix it up, spice it up, and entertain us with their unique take on COVID and lockdown in 2020. Today's guest is Jasmine Moseley. Jasmine loves art and people. In her work so far, she has toured around Australia and the world, spanning music, dance, theatre, and festivals. Recent highlights include working on the mile-long opera on the High Line and festivals and productions at the Public Theatre in Astor Place, New York. When not in a theatre of some kind, she's usually found in galleries, museums, parks, and snapping photos on the street. Jasmine was also really proud to work on the 2019 and 2020 Under the Radar festivals by the Public Theatre in New York. Jasmine is currently working on Rising, which is a surge of art, music, and ceremony in the heart of Melbourne. It is a new festival, it's very exciting, and it is beginning on the evening of the total lunar eclipse in May 2021. Jasmine Moseley, hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Well, I'm glad to be here, Dan, virtually on your podcast.
I'm very, very excited to have you. Now, as you know, we ask identical questions to all of our guests. This is your beginner's call. Are you ready to start?
Roger that. Yes, ready to go.
Okay. Question number one. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself that perhaps wasn't covered in the introduction?
I guess I'm a person who has worked in the arts for a while, and
Right.
I'm very passionate about live performance. So
Excellent.
everything in my life seems to have touched that. So I studied music when I was at high school and university, and then I sort of moved into sort of naturally into working to support live performance. And during that time, I guess I've developed my own practice of photography, and that's something that I do in my spare time. So, but I sort of like to move and shift with the winds and see what comes up, you know.
Yeah.
So that's so it's been interesting, sort of during this time
Yes, absolutely.
with different things happening. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like that. Shifting with the wind. That's a very cute way of putting working in the arts and entertainment industry.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I'll move on to question number 2. What is your current location and what is the state of lockdown there?
Well, Dan, I'm coming to you live from Melbourne.
Oh, hello.
Come in Sydney.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm actually in the heart of Melbourne, and I've just moved into a new apartment, and I'm sort of in the middle of the city. So when I say that I'm in Melbourne, I'm truly in Melbourne.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's where I am now, and I actually was born in Kew in Melbourne.
Okay.
And I grew up out in Blackburn, travelled away a lot, but now I find myself back here.
Okay. And what is the current state of lockdown in Melbourne?
Things have changed. So actually things are starting to open up.
Okay.
And so, you know, if you had spoken to me 6 months ago or 4 months ago, it's been very different. I feel like we've gone through so many different phases. I've been here during the full extent of the lockdown where, you know, we were only able to leave the house for an hour a day, and could only travel within a certain amount of kilometres from our homes.
Right.
But now it's much more open. So, for example, I can go out on the street, and if no one else is around, it's okay to not wear a face mask.
Oh, okay.
But I can put a face mask on if I'd like to go into a store, and they're open. You know, I can go. You know, the shops are starting to open back up, and it's starting to feel different.
Wow.
A lot more people around. It's actually quite surreal because during the depths of the lockdown, I went on lots of walks.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been in various places before I came to where I am now. So I've been exploring different parts of the city, and truly there was nothing around. There was nothing happening, it felt, during the depths of the lockdown. So when you say lockdown, I think it doesn't feel locked down anymore, is how I would describe it.
Yeah, that's actually a really good description. And the follow-up question I asked to everyone with this is, are masks still mandatory where you are?
They are mandatory in particular contexts.
Okay.
I have to say, though, I feel like there's an announcement every week, and I've a little bit lost track, to be perfectly frank.
Okay.
But I believe it's compulsory to always have a mask with you.
Right.
So you must have one ready.
Mm-hmm.
You must wear one on public transport.
Mm-hmm.
You must wear one if you're going inside the supermarket. I think you find as well inside the middle of the city with lots of different groups of people, there's a lot more mask wearing going on still inside the middle of the city, and there's a lot more people now.
Okay.
So you still see them, but I've heard on the grapevine that in other cities there's no masks at all in Australia.
Yes. Yes, indeed. I have just been on holidays up to the mid-north coast of New South Wales, where I had a mask with me at all times, but I did not see one person with a mask. But I was at a bush beach, and the village I was in had a population of 500 people. So
wow.
yeah. So it's not like being in Sydney or Melbourne where there are millions and millions of people. So I'm going to move on to question number 3 now. Are you still in the same location as pre-COVID, as in like early March or earlier this year? And are you still doing the same thing? And when I mean the same thing, if you worked in a pub, are you still working in a pub now, for example?
It's a very good question. Well, I'm definitely not in the same place.
Right.
I am sort of working in the same industry, but I'm doing something slightly different.
Okay.
So, yeah, life has changed a lot.
Yeah, right. And would you like to share with us where you were pre-COVID? And, well, we know you're in Melbourne now.
Well, at the start of March, I was actually living and working in New York City.
Oh, wow.
Very happily, settled there. I was in my second year of being there, and I was working at the Public Theatre downtown in Astor Place in Manhattan. I was preparing to jump into lots of work in the spring, but before I was going to do that work, I agreed with work, there's a good moment for a vacation to visit my family in Australia. So on the 4th of March, I hopped on a plane with my suitcase, and I was ready for 2.5 weeks of vacation in Australia. Well, things unfolded slightly different to what I had anticipated.
Yes, I can see that now.
I suppose that could be the understatement of the year.
I know. Very subtle, very subtle.
And so when I got the day before I left, I remember there was a bit of a strange report that the hand sanitizer supplies were running very low. It was very hard to get a hold of.
Right.
It started to feel like things were shifting, but I thought, look, what's the worst that can happen? I think I'll still go. I think it'll be okay, and I'll leave my laptop in my apartment in Washington Heights and for work. And if I come back and there's any problems, at least I've got my computer there and I can start doing my work at home. But I didn't seriously think that there would be
what unfolded.
No. And actually, Dazzo, my background is I've been a company manager for many years. Before I worked at a theatre, I was working for the Australian Ballet.
Right, yes.
I had actually been on the road for over 10 years touring with the Australian Ballet. So I'm sort of used to being on the move and I'm used to packing my bag. But I tell you what, I did a really bad pack. I was a little bit scattered, which is not really what a company manager is for other people, but maybe I needed my own company manager in that moment.
Wow.
It was a shambles, and I realised halfway to the airport that I'd left crucial cards at home, but there was terrible traffic going out to JFK and I couldn't go back. So, and I just remember whizzing through feeling extremely stressed and sort of thinking,
Maybe it's karma saying that you haven't done your stuff in New York and you have to go back to pick up all your stuff again. So, maybe you've left it there unconsciously so you can go back and pick it up and finish what you hadn't yet done. So you've mentioned that you were a company manager and you worked in all these festivals and you are still kind of doing the same thing. So you are one of the very lucky few who has managed to still continue working in the arts during this pandemic.
Yes, I'm extremely fortunate. I came back here and I worked remotely actually for quite a while doing work for the Public Theatre. But as you may be aware, there's just everything's come to a standstill in terms of, live productions, etc., that are happening in theatrical spaces like the Public. What happened was I saw a job advertised for the Rising Festival here in Melbourne, and I thought, that sounds incredible. I wonder if I could have an opportunity to work on that festival. So I put in my application and I was very fortunate to find a job as the program administrator there. So,
wow, congratulations.
Thank you. Obviously, any employment opportunities at the moment are highly contested, so I feel very fortunate to have come out the other side and to have been successful.
I'm going to move on to question number 4, if that's okay. So, since COVID-19 and the restrictions started, what do you miss doing that you can't do right now?
I miss a lot of things. I feel like the best answer is just being in the place that I had decided to call my home in New York, and just to be able to have an openness and a flexibility to life that a lot of us were privileged to enjoy pre-COVID.
So that leads on to my question number 5. What skill do you feel that you have improved at during this time?
Oh, well, what I'd love to say is Spanish, speaking Spanish, because I started learning Spanish during lockdown, finally. But I suppose there's just been so much going on and so much flux. So I suppose maybe just learning to be more still, learning to appreciate what I have, recognise some gifts for what they are, and to find a way to be at peace with where I found myself. Obviously, this is still a work in progress, but I would say that's something I feel like I've maybe not improved at, but
work towards.
Gotten to terms with.
I feel
exactly.
A lot of us have done that as well, and it kind of feels, looking back with reflection, quite like the right thing to do at this moment in time. Be grateful for what you've got. These are some of the things that you have improved at on reflection, but on the flip side, what have you discovered that you are absolutely rubbish at? And I think you may have answered this before, like packing a suitcase.
Oh dear, what am I rubbish at? It's not like I tried roller skating and discovered I was terrible, or so many people I know seem to have taken up roller skating. I guess I meant to sort of reignite bicycle riding, but since I haven't actually hopped on a bike, I'd say I'm probably pretty bad at that because I haven't done it.
Yeah, I think
That might
I
be
think a bike
something.
is a prerequisite of bike riding, so I've been told.
I've heard that, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, with everything that has changed recently and everything's gone a wee bit topsy-turvy and everyone's priorities have
Mm.
changed, which you've touched on, what have you realised that you've become grateful for?
Oh, look, I'm so grateful for the generosity and support of
Okay.
friends. Even when I first moved to New York, I had so much, just people extend themselves and are generous to you in ways that you don't always know that they're going to be. And I'm sincerely grateful for all the friends that helped me pack my things remotely, store them, all that kind of stuff
Right.
overseas. And everybody who was generous enough to help me navigate this time of transition back in Australia, realising that I would be here for longer than I anticipated. So, and I'm grateful. I mean, my family is just sort of endlessly
Yes.
supportive. Dad's fixed about 1 million lamps. But do you know something else I'm really grateful for? I have a few friends that I spent a lot of time walking around with, either photographing or just walking and talking. And I'm really grateful for that generosity of time, and the willingness to be vulnerable together and just kind of find a way to move through the uncertainty of this COVID time. There's a few different groups of friends or people that I've been speaking to online, across countries, all different places, those little spaces we've all been able to carve out for each other and just go, hey, we're here. It's lovely to be reminded of those things that matter to us, and particularly living, I don't know, I feel like I've lived an itinerant life for a little while. Haven't felt very settled.
Yes. A travelling gypsy.
A little, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a bit of a shock to be confronted with some of the things I left in storage, Dan.
Right. I see.
Like, how did a gypsy end up having such a heavy couch? But
I get it. I think this travelling gypsy has found some crazy things as well in the last few months and going, really? Wow. Okay. Sure. I don't know why, how, and when I bought that and why I still have it, but yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, okay. I'm going to move on to question number 8. Now, this could be very, very embarrassing for you, but it could be
oh, okay.
highly entertaining for us. So I'm hoping that's the case. Are you ready for this question?
Look, I'm as ready as I'll ever be, Dan, and,
Okay.
bring it on.
All right, here we go. What is something that you don't want the rest of the world to know that you may have binged out at during lockdown? And examples might be binged watched a television series in all of one day, played computer games, or ate a whole packet of chocolate biscuits in 3.5 minutes. So I've been told.
Well, look, I'd like to say that I try not to carry regret. So if I do eat a block of chocolate, which I do regularly, in fact, I feel no shame. Well, maybe just a little, but that's I wouldn't be worried about telling you.
Right.
But when I was, so in the early days of the pandemic, I was staying with my parents again.
Okay.
And they love gardening, and something that I've begun to really enjoy, even though I'm not a good gardener. But I have started watching Gardening Australia
I see.
every week.
Wow.
And I feel slightly embarrassed about that, but it's a wonderful show.
I'm so glad that you say this because, if I ask myself, what am I absolutely rubbish at? The last question, I would say gardening. I am appalling. I'm absolutely shocking. But to hear that you can now do gardening, I went, oh, I can ask you questions.
Oh, well, when I say, I mean, I watch gardening, but, they actually had this great person on that was speaking about indoor plants recently, and that's just been a revelation. I've learned so many things, and actually, this makes me think. I mean, this is a guilty pleasure, but as you probably realise sometimes these guilty secret pleasures are secret passions.
Yes.
And something I've noticed and that I love about my mum and my dad cultivate this beautiful garden at home, and with all my travelling I had never seen, just watching everything sort of grow and prosper or die away and new things coming up. And I suppose because I've travelled so much, I haven't had the time to care for plants and to figure out what's happening with them.
Right.
But now I've got a few plants on the go. I've got a little monstera. I've got a couple of cacti that are still living. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You've got some cacti that are still living.
Hey, there was a feature on cacti last night.
Oh, I'm sorry. Right? Yes, on ABC.
On the show.
On ABC Australia. Yes.
Yeah. So look, I don't know. It's a guilty pleasure, and it gives me. There's something lovely about the theme song. I know that a lot of people are really addicted to the Great British Bake Off, and I think I feel about Gardening Australia a similar way to how people feel about the Bake Off, like intrigued, learning a lot of affection and comfort. I hear the little theme song. That's how I feel.
Do you think it might be that creative side of the brain where you start with nothing and end up with something quite beautiful? Like with the cake, you start off with some flour and eggs and you end up with a beautiful Victorian sponge. With the garden, you start off with dirt, some type of flowers in a pot, and then you put them in and you end up with a beautiful garden.
Well, that's true actually, Dan, and something that I hadn't truly appreciated. It is a creative expression, actually, gardening, and I love photographing light and things. I don't know. I'm not. I just love being out, experiencing whatever's happening. And the great thing about garden environments is that they can provide so much changing complexity. They're never really the same.
No, they're not.
And I love that. And so I guess in exploring that with my photography, you appreciate the art of gardening, for what it is.
Okay.
My goodness, Dan, I'm sorry. I spoke so long about gardens. I don't know.
Oh, no.
Clearly, I love them.
Don't worry. That's the embarrassing sound bites that I'm looking for.
Happy to do your service there, yes.
I'm going to move on to the next question, and it's a little bit of a segue after you've just mentioned photography.
Oh.
So here we go. You're out walking along the street taking photos, and you start chatting to someone you find later happens to be a soap opera producer. They are amazed by your personality and talent from chatting to you that they just right there and then offer you a lead acting role. What type of character are you hoping that they're going to write for you, considering soaps are just a little bit more dramatic than real life?
Oh, how thrilling. Oh, that's so exciting. And there I was thinking I was going to get my break in New York City. And here it was all along.
Wow.
When I think about soaps, I think about The Bold and the Beautiful, which I used to watch in a clandestine way. I wasn't really allowed to watch much television and commercial television, my goodness. I always liked that there's a matriarch, Stephanie.
Okay.
Stephanie in Bold.
Right.
And maybe it'd be nice to be an exciting, sort of powerful character like that.
Wow.
Someone a bit different. But then I think to myself, why don't I, maybe I could be something wild and different to, I don't know.
Well, it's more of a character personality that you would so love to play, and you want to play the matriarch.
Yes, the idea of being this matriarch of I don't know, a crime family or something crazy. Something a bit different to my life would be thrilling. Or I'd love to be like a flamboyant, dramatic type character that sort of bursts in. I'd love that.
Okay.
Maybe I should be speaking Spanish. Actually, maybe I'm coming at this from the wrong angle. But yeah, something. I'm open to the possibilities, and maybe there'll be a couple of roles available. I mean, why not think big?
This is very true. Maybe you could find yourself in a Spanish novella, being a Spanish-speaking matriarch of a crime family. There we go.
That sounds great.
Snap.
I mean, I'm really into that concept, so let's sort of see where that takes us.
Yeah, we'll workshop that later.
And there I was thinking I'd be a company manager of artists, and here I am on the stage.
That's right. It's your time to shine.
Oh, goodness. I don't know if the world's ready, Dan, but yeah, seatbelts on.
Well, Jasmine, sadly, that is the end of the questions. But just before we conclude our interview, you're working with Annie Leibovitz, the famous American portrait photographer.
Oh, goodness.
With a famous client. And Annie has to leave in a hurry in the middle of the shoot.
Wow.
As she's running out the door, she apologizes and asks if you can help sort it out and also snap some photos for her later. She's taken all of her cameras and all you've got is your phone on you. What do you do?
Well, actually, I usually carry a little camera in my bag.
Okay.
But if I did have my phone, I think I'd be okay. Well, I'd be with someone famous and fascinating, so we'll probably have a bit of a chit chat with that person and just make sure that I'll probably just have a chat, and then we'd probably have some fun and just do some creative, interesting things. And then I'd be so excited to show to Annie what we made. Maybe we could even well, it depends. We could be anywhere. I mean, she's shot the Queen at Buckingham Palace.
This
we
is
could
very
be in
true.
the palace.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm excited by the possibilities.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, the amazing thing is that when Annie runs out the door, it's like the golden hour. So there's amazing light,
Right.
and that's kind of all you need.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was really fortunate in terms of timing. And
Wow. Thank you for adding that to the script. I totally forgot that. But yes, that's exactly right.
Absolutely. And the phone's not too bad. No, there's nothing that we can't fix up in post-production.
Annie's obviously got very, very expensive, handsome cameras that do a lot of, focus shifting. The iPhones and the Google phones all have this portrait mode. Would you actually try a few portrait mode photos and pretend, they could have been taken on a professional camera?
No, actually.
Okay.
I actually just really love working with whatever I have.
Okay.
Is the truth.
Yeah.
And I actually love the limitations of. I think I look back on some of my early iPhone photography, and I think there's something wonderful about it.
It's a little bit raw, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it's amazing what you can achieve and sort of trick the lens. I mean, it feels so lucky.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think, do I need to bring a camera around? Sacrilege, but I generally do carry something around with me. But what a thrilling concept! That's
Wow.
that's so cool. I'm honoured that. So I must have been a camera assistant or something.
Well,
maybe I was just helping to adjust the lights. Or...
I don't know. The script writer hasn't actually detailed what you were doing. It was just you're working with Annie Leibovitz because that came to them at 3 a.m. this morning when they were thinking what personalised question they could ask you. Well, Jasmine, it has been so much fun talking to you. If you'd like to follow Jasmine on social media, you can find her at Twitter and Instagram at JazInTown. The links will also be listed in the show's description. Jasmine Moseley, I'm very impressed by your photography. I love looking at your creative captures. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Lockdown Hotline Sessions.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, and pleasure potting with you.
Well, as we come to the end of another episode of the Lockdown Hotline Sessions, my name is Danielle Lonnon, and you can find me on all the socials at DameDivaDan. Until next time, thank you so much for listening. Stay safe and be kind. Ciao. This episode of the Lockdown Hotline Sessions was recorded and produced in Sydney in December of 2020.